ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 o'clock in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Lagos. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. ECOWAS founding father General Yakubu Gowon makes passionate plea to the current leadership of the bloc to bring back Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso into the fold.
We must not let these setbacks define us. Rather, let them awaken us to the urgent need to recommit.
Former Senegalese Prime Minister Amadou Ba calls for democratic and economic paths.
Permettez-moi de saluer d'emblée l'initiative de ce dialogue national.
Allow me to first commend the initiative of this national dialogue. Despite the turbulence, it is the gesture of openness that deserves to be praised.
Ghana's suspended Chief Justice's injunction application unanimously dismissed by Supreme Court, and Catholic bishops in Togo urge political actors and state authorities to ensure good governance. Details of these stories and more coming up shortly.
Christopher Aticho with Newslink.
Grateful for your time with us, and Newslink begins with some development in Nigeria, where in a powerful and emotional address at the 50th anniversary of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, held today in Lagos, a historic voice echoed through the halls of regional diplomacy. General Yakubu Gowon, the only surviving founding father of ECOWAS, made a passionate plea to the current leadership of the bloc. Gowon urged ECOWAS leaders to make efforts, diplomatic or otherwise, to bring back Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso into the fold, even suggesting that if they cannot return as individual nations, they should be welcome as a group.
Belief in democracy is what advising all members of ECOWAS in the countries. We must not let these setbacks define us. Rather, let them awaken us to the urgent need to recommit to the core principles of good governance, economic cooperation, solidarity, and inclusivity. Let us remember that ECOWAS is not an institution for the leaders of our region alone, but a community for the people with constructive, respectful, and mutual beneficial dialogue. I firmly believe there is a path forward. Our sister nations that have chosen to exit the community may in time reconsider their decision, as the bonds of history, culture, and shared destiny remain unbroken. I am confident that with goodwill and sincere engagement, they will find reason to return to ECOWAS family. My advice is that, Mr. President, I will ask you to please continue, not to push them away, but continue to draw them, be open, continue to be open-minded and open-handed to them. And I believe sooner or later they will come in a comeback. If they do not come back as individual nations, I hope they can come back, as a group, in a group. Forward ever, backward never for ECOWAS.
And that's General Yakubu Gowon, the only surviving founding father of ECOWAS. Meanwhile, Nigeria's former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, who has been a vocal commentator on the evolution and challenges of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, says that few believed that ECOWAS treaty would endure, given the diverse political and economic landscape of the member states. However, ECOWAS has persisted for 5 decades, marking its 50th anniversary in 2025. In recent years, Professor Akinyemi Yemi has expressed concerns about the bloc's direction and external influences. He criticized the proposed admission of Morocco into ECOWAS, arguing that it could undermine Nigeria's influence and the organization's regional integrity. He stated that such move might be motivated by a desire to dilute Nigeria's leadership role within the bloc. Furthermore, Yemi highlighted the geopolitical tensions affecting ECOWAS, particularly the withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. He attributed these developments to external powers, suggesting that Russia is emboldening these countries to weaken Western influence in the region.
I think we should all be happy. I'm sure in 1975, when this was signed, Treaty of Lagos, very few people believe that it will last this much, because there were problems, language problems, personality problems, all kinds of problems, and yet here we are celebrating 50 years. There are hiccups, but even nations that are 200 years old have hiccups. So really that there are problems does not mean that there's not been major achievement. You can travel by road to Ghana or to even Ivory Coast without anybody bothering you.
And that's Nigeria's former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. Back here in Senegal, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye has officially launched the National Dialogue on the Political System this Wednesday, May 28, 2025, in Diamagio, outside the outskirts of the capital. In a solemn speech, Bassirou Diomaye Faye affirmed the opposition will be respected and will freely exercise its rights in accordance with the law. In the presence of key opposition figures, but in a notable absence of former President Macky Sall and his party, the Alliance for the Republic, APR. Speaking at the opening of this meeting, which will run until June 4, the head of state emphasized that this broad and inclusive consultation represents to the injunction to respect the dates codified in the Republican calendar, the National Day of Dialogue established on May 28 for the second initiative of this type since his inauguration on May 2, 2024. But President Bassirou Diomaye Faye praised the Senegalese tradition of dialogue, stressing that this approach was not aimed at diffusing a crisis, but a writing together even more beautiful pages of more national political story.
L'expression le Sénégal est un pays de dialogue.
The expression Senegal is a country of dialogue. It's not a matter of chance. We owe it to a legacy rooted in pensio and deso, to a political consciousness matured through history, and to a culture of modernization and to a culture of moderation inherited from our predecessors. Our responsibility is to preserve this legacy and pass it on intact. Moreover, we must guard against stagnation or the status quo. We must regularly examine the societal dynamics within our beloved country. Indeed, the tensions that have shaken Senegal are still too present to be forgotten. Lives have been lost. Families are still mourning their dead. Moral wounds remain to be healed. As President of the Republic, I bow respectfully to the memory of all the victims who, from independence to the present day, marked the path of our journey towards a fully realized democracy. I extend to their families, their friends, and their comrades in struggle the solidarity of the nation.
À leurs amis et à leurs compagnons de lutte, la solidarité de la nation.
And that's Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye. Meanwhile, former Senegalese Prime Minister Amadou Ba, who took part in the national dialogue on Wednesday, is calling for shared responsibility before the nation in the face of persistent political tensions. Despite the boycott by part of the opposition, the former Prime Minister emphasized that his participation in the national dialogue was not a matter of naivety, but of loyalty to democratic and republican principles. Barr structured his speech around three main axes of dialogue. The first part of public freedoms called for national paths of political pacification based on the release of political prisoners, media independence, and judicial procedures perceived as fair and impartial.
Permettez-moi de saluer d'emblée l'initiative de ce dialogue national.
Allow me to first commend the initiative of this national dialogue. Despite the turbulence, it is the gesture of openness that deserves to be praised. We, the Republican opposition, are participating not out of naivety, but out of fidelity to our principles, faith in the future, and love for our country. Yes, the climate is tense. Yes, there are arrests and liberties are being intermittently restricted. But precisely because the context is so difficult, dialogue becomes all the more necessary. To refuse dialogue is to choose a dead end, and to take part is to assume one's share of responsibility before the nation. These dialogues are organized around three key areas which we support. The first concerns public freedoms. But what kind of democracy arrests its opponent, where journalists and commentators are summoned, sometimes detained, for simply doing their jobs? We call for a national pact for political pacification, based on the release of political detainees, the independence of the media, and judicial procedures that are seen as fair and impartial. The second area concerns the electoral system. Let us give substance to the status of the opposition and its leader. Let us provide the Electoral Commission (SENA) with the necessary means and independence. And regarding youth registration, the automatic registration of young adults in the electoral roll, we believe such a deeply impactful reform must be the subject of strong national consensus.
And that former Senegalese Prime Minister Amadou Ba.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's take you to Ghana, where President John Dramani Mahama says the government is set to roll out its flagship 24-hour economy, with plans to activate the Volta Lake as a major transport corridor and decentralize the implementation of the policy. Speaking at a multi-sectorial engagement at the Jubilee House, the president revealed that he has reviewed the full draft of the policy and says it is ready to deliver results. As part of the program, the government plans to establish a 24-hour secretariat to coordinate the rollout. According to Mahama, a major highlight of the policy is the development of the Volta Lake Economic Corridor, which will transform the lake into a national logistics route.
As a destination, the 24-hour economy policy reflects a state where Ghana's productivity and capital utilization will become so high that we'll have to operate in multiple shifts across day and night, maximizing the return on infrastructure, on human resources and innovation. This idea captured the public imagination during the 2024 campaign and remains at the core of our drive towards full employment and inclusive economic growth. As a program, the 24-hour economy demands a deep and deliberate restructuring of our productive economy. We must re-engineer our production systems from top to bottom, boosting volumes and diversity and shifting from reliance on raw materials towards the export of value-added products, wholesome foods, pharmaceuticals, garments, industrial inputs, and digital services. Earlier this month, I received the complete draft of the 24-hour economic policy from my advisor, Mr. Guzitano. I have reviewed it, and I'm confident we now have a coherent and actionable framework with which to deliver the results. An effective catalyst for the 24-hour economy policy is a stable macroeconomic environment, which we are achieving through close coordination between the monetary and fiscal authorities.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama. Meanwhile, after a temporary closure linked to a fraud scandal, the Ghanaian embassy in Washington, D.C. has been reopened today, May 29, with a new diplomatic team and reform systems. In an official statement released Tuesday, Ghanaian authorities stated that this reopening comes after the recall of all diplomatic staff based in the United States and the suspension of locally recruited staff. A team of seasoned diplomats led by senior ministry officials has been dispatched to take over the diplomatic mission and restore the embassy's operational integrity. Nade Detete tells us more.
The ministry said a specialized information technology team has also been mobilized to completely reconfigure the embassy's website and payment platforms with the aim of eliminating all unofficial links and vulnerabilities in the digital system. This series of structural reforms follows the discovery of a fraudulent system set up by Fred Kwarting, a locally recruited IT agent. For at least 5 years, he had diverted visa and passport applicants to a private company he owned, the Ghana Travel Consultants, GTC, illegally charging fees of up to $60 per application. The revenue collected without the approval of the ministry or parliament was kept in a personal account. Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa had described the practices as corruption of the utmost gravity and ordered a forensic audit and referral to the Auditor General and the Attorney General for appropriate legal action and sanctions. The reopening of the embassy marks a new milestone in President John Dramani Mahama's governance policy based on transparency, accountability, and zero tolerance for corruption. The ministry reaffirmed its commitment to protecting Ghana's esteemed image in the community of nations and sustainably improving the quality of its consular services.
That's not the data with that report. Still in Ghana, the country's suspended Chief Justice Gertrude Torkornoo has suffered yet another defeat in her attempts to halt the proceedings by the 5-member committee set up to probe the 3 petitions seeking her removal. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court unanimously dismissed her injunction application against the committee. This ruling was delivered a few hours after her supplementary affidavit was also struck out unanimously by the court. Recall Gertrude Araba Esaba Saki Torkornoo on May 21 filed an application to the Supreme Court seeking to restrain a committee set up by President John Dramani Mahama to investigate petition seeking her removal from office. In the suit, she requested an interlocutory injunction to halt all proceedings of the committee pending the final determination of the case. Other legal actions taken by other individuals and a group at the Supreme Court against the processes so far by the committee have been dismissed. You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. We are also live on Facebook at WADR English Service, as well as YouTube at WADR News. Here is a reminder of our top stories. ECOWAS founding father General Yakubu Gowon makes passionate plea to the current leadership of the bloc to bring back Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso into the fold. Former Senegalese Prime Minister Amadou Ba calls for democratic and economic paths. Ghana's suspended Chief Justice injunction application unanimously dismissed by the Supreme Court. And still ahead in the news, Catholic bishops in Togo urge political actors and state authorities to ensure good governance. We do have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Togo, the Conference of Catholic Bishops have spoken out in response to recent political development in the country. They responded to the country's socio-political situation this Monday. In a contest marked by a constitutional revision, the Bishops' Conference of Togo expressed its concern in a statement released on May 26, 2025. Let's join Francis Boniface for the details.
In this press release, the bishops emphasized that Togo's transition from a presidential to a parliamentary regime without genuine dialogue poses a problem. Father Julien Sebedi is the Secretary General of the Conference of Bishops of Togo, CET.
Nous, évêques du Togo, tenons à exprimer une nouvelle fois bishops of Togo wish to express once again our deep concern about the evolving socio-political situation in our country. On May 3, 2025, our country officially transitioned from the Fourth Republic to the Fifth Republic in a context of intense tension, heaviness in people's hearts, and general frustration caused by the population's precarious living conditions. This change, made without any genuine national dialogue, is causing misunderstandings and poses serious risks to Togo's social cohesion and stability.
Et fait peser de graves risques sur la cohésion sociale et la stabilité du Togo.
Faced with this situation, the bishops made an appeal to the Togolese authorities and to all political actors and other key stakeholders of the nation.
Que les autorités prennent conscience du
May the authorities become aware of the growing unrest among the population. May the people's voice be heard with respect and considered. May a process of appeasement be initiated with discernment through genuine, frank, sincere, inclusive, and constructive dialogue. We urge all stakeholders in national life, including politics, civil society, the defense force, and security forces, and all religious denominations, to work together to preserve the unity, peace, and future of our country.
La paix et l'avenir de notre pays.
The Togolese Bishops' Conference invites Catholic Christians to intensify their prayers for justice, peace, dignity, and respect for the rights of all citizens. We ask that the intention be carried forward during the novena in preparation for Pentecost from Friday, May 30 to Saturday, June 7, 2025, the prelates concluded.
And that's a report by WADR's Sylvie Wadrago in Lome and voiced by Francis Boniface.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Meanwhile, as ECOWAS Commission clocks 50 years of existence today, discussions are ongoing about successes and challenges of the regional bloc. Concerns are also being raised about the future of ECOWAS and its new plans for the sub-region. Marie-Josiah Enga, the Francophone Project Coordinator with Wademos Network, shares with WADR the progress and obstacles that confront the regional bloc in the areas of good governance and democracy, while proposing measures to ensure sustained gains.
The regional body has gone through a lot. Some, like we can say, some successes, but also some challenges in facing, in promoting democracy and good governance. So if we want to talk about ECOWAS work or ECOWAS successes in good governance and democracy, we can talk about its effort in conflict mediation and peacekeeping. ECOWAS has played a critical role in conflict resolution in Liberia, Sierra Leone, in Côte d'Ivoire. Over the years, it facilitated peace processes and helped establish democratic governance post-conflict. And the ECOWAS standby force is one of the notable success in ensuring security in times of crisis and political instability in the region. ECOWAS also has been able to promote democratic transition in Ghana, Senegal, and Sierra Leone, helping to build, stable democratic system. The protocol on the democracy and good governance is a milestone that, established or institutionalized key democratic norms like free and fair elections, respect for human rights, and norms like term limits that up to today are still outstanding, but there has been some attempts to standardize such provision. Then we can also think of the aspect of election monitoring and support. ECOWAS has made significant contribution in improving the credibility of elections in West Africa through election observation mission. It helped to ensure transparencies in many countries in West Africa. Yes, the regional body has made some efforts since its creation to maintain good governance and democracy, knowing that initially it was not part of its mandate, but it became necessary given the context of the time with the military regimes. And so, of course, over the years, there has been a lot of challenges.
But before we actually delve into the challenges and some of the political crisis and ECOWAS response to all of those, in brief, you've been able to touch on some of the things that ECOWAS has done and then facilitated good governance and democracy in some countries in the sub-region. And you talked about term limits. Yes, indeed, we still see that some countries in the region are not really adhering to term limits. Some are bent on power drunk, and so ECOWAS is unable to actually speak in some of those countries or interfere in some of those countries for their sovereignty's sake. What would you say about ECOWAS' inability to respond to some of these essential things that are critical of them?
In my opinion, as a regional body, ECOWAS has certain challenges, right? And I think it speaks right to, so it can be attributed to several key factors. The fact that ECOWAS is unable to respond to some of those crises. And I think one of the first reason is limited enforcement mechanism, right? There is sometimes most of ECOWAS decisions and sanctions are often non-binding on member states, so it makes the compliance level low. And then we should also talk about the weak institutions, the institutions that constitute the ECOWAS Commission, the regional court, for instance, the ECOWAS Court of Justice, for instance, which starts with resolving disputes and ensuring adherence to the region's laws. I think it's almost, I don't know if I should say it's almost in existence, but let's say it faces resistance from member states. So many countries ignore the rulings, and ECOWAS lacks that authority to bring states to implement decisions, especially when it involves, like you said, domestic political affairs.
Marie-José Enga is the Francophone Project Coordinator with Wadr Network. And in sports this evening in football, the Sierra Leone women's national team, the indomitable Sierra Queens, have edged their names into the history books by securing a sensational spot in the semi-finals of the WAFU Zone A Women's Cup Mauritania 2025, a defeat never achieved in Sierra Leone's football history. Against all odds and after a rocky start, the Queens showed the heart of true champions. Following a tough 3-0 loss to Gambia in the opener, the team came back roaring, defeating Guinea in a thrilling 3-1 showdown and then holding tournament giant Senegal to a 1-1 draw. With 4 hard-earned points, Sierra Leone clinched second place in Group B and stormed into the semi-finals for the first time. But the story is not just about results, it is about heroes. And with that, we've come to the end of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. Many thanks to Fali Lusso and Shekin Jai for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook at WADR English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is 50/50 Agenda Program. I am Christopher Aticho. Good evening and enjoy the rest of our broadcasts.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM. New